All right, Tarun, you're all set.
All right. So do you want to quickly do the intros, Bernard, as well?
Yes. So Bernard Morgan, I'm Security Partner Development Manager based here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Again, I'm here with Ryan Ray, who is the practice lead for the Charlotte office in Slalom. And for today's presenters, want to introduce Tarun Sharma, who's a Partner Solutions Architect and North America's Security Lead. Great presentation that he has planned for you today. He'll be supported by Dirk Eden, who works for Slalom and also a security leader and enterprise architect. And coordinating with this session, and I work with daily, is Daniel Prager. He is not only a Google PDM, but he also supports the entire relationship between Google Cloud and Slalom. So thanks all for the presenters and the organizers for today's sessions and for each of you for attending.
Over to you, Dirk.
Yeah, so, I'm going to flash through these slides fairly quickly because Tarun's got a very, very, very full deck of things to share with everyone. Just a little bit about our organization. We're a purpose-led global business and technology consulting company that deals with all aspects of security and Google solutions and helping our customers onboard and migrate to the Google Cloud. If you want to go to the next slide, we'll share the slides up just in the interest of time. I'll just walk through it. We take a holistic view and we partner to the end, and we really focus on the outcome for the client. So the topic for today is speaking about how you secure your GenAI solutions or workloads. But as background to this, Slalom helps organizations with landing securely in the cloud and getting the baseline security up to scratch, working with all aspects of the life cycle. And a subset of this is going to be the securing your GenAI workloads that Tarun's going to take us through. Tarun, I think that's my last slide, and that's you.
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks for that, Dirk. And as Bernard said in the chat, feel free to post questions. We'll try to take them in the end, and we'll try to address as many as we can. If we cannot address any questions, then we'll take it up offline, and we definitely will make sure that we'll get back to you. So the agenda is quite full for today. We'll start with some overview of what GenAI for Google looks like, right? What is the portfolio? It keeps on changing every day. It's a very dynamic sort of new industry that has come up over the last 1 year, but also we're gonna deep dive into like how as like any other workload, how are we thinking about securing GenAI workload, right? Both from the infrastructure point of view as well as from the application point of view. And then before the next step, there is actually a bonus section where we're going to talk about how Google is leveraging its own GenAI in its own services, especially in security, right? Think about Siemens, or think about Security Command Center, CSPM solution that we have, and other sort of service areas in security. So I think that's also very interesting and exciting that is coming up in next few months. Starting with, before we get into like how we secure it, I mean, what is exactly GenAI, right? So as we look at the history of how the AI, machine learning and AI, has been transforming over the years, it started with basic data structures. People who come from programming background knows, that you put in those values, hard-coded values into your code, and then you can query them, right? That's the traditional programming that you see on the left-hand side of this slide. And then we went to more like, a neural nets in around 2012-ish, where you feed in a lot of photos or a lot of data to a model, and the model will try to, basically, tell you, classify that data into something, right? So you train the model, and then when you put in the production or any other data into there, it will try to come up with a forecast. It will try to come up with a classification and so forth. But with the GenAI is all about novel content, which means that you feed in tons and tons of data. We are talking about petabyte scale data, right? Or even more. And then it try to analyze that data and come up with its own observations and analysis, right? So that's something that has not been done before in any of the AI world. And that is something new that has come up with all the things that Google and other companies are developing, right? Google is not new to this world. Google has been on the forefront of GenAI since forever, since we started working on the transformer paper that actually laid the foundation for everything GenAI that you see now out in the world, including all the other models that you see, right? So the transformer model was written in collaboration with University of Toronto and Google researchers, and that actually led to the foundation of other models over the years like BERT, AlphaFold, and now we are looking at BART. In fact, just today we have released Gemini as well, in different sizes and whatnot. So it's very exciting how it is progressing over the years and the new updates that are coming up. One thing that we have been instrumental in is to build the stack, from the ground up, right? So we are not relying on any third party to lease their stack or to lease their platform. This platform, this data layer, this AI layer, this hardware layer, everything is built by Google. So we have a control over what we are trying to do with this and how we want to try to expand in the future as well. Sorry, I just skipped one slide. What are basically large language models? As I was saying, large language models are the ones that create that novel content, right? So and they're pre-trained on billions of parameters, right? So they're not looking at only one small set of data, and we are not training them on one set of data. There's a huge amount of data that is being ingested by these models, and that is why they are able to produce that and analyze the novel content and create content which is not fed to them, but created from the the content, make things up from the content that that is being pushed to them as test content, right? So and it also changes how we interact with the model, how we interact with the AI, because it is more closer to the understanding of human language than the other models, which are basically used for classifying and other purposes, right? Google has a lot of foundational models in place. We have Gemini is our multi-model, which means that it is trained on multiple styles of content. But we do have specific model for text, for chat, for images, for code generation, and so forth, right? So foundational models are the ones which are pre-trained, and you can use them, to build your own models on top of that, or to use it in your code, or to use it in your applications that you are developing. And this is where a partner like Slalom can really help you out. If you have ideas to play around with that, then please feel free to reach out to Slalom, and they are doing great work in this field with Google. Now, there are some enterprise use cases for GenAI, which means that if you're looking at regulatory compliance, if you're looking at intra-knowledge Q&A, like a chatbot style interaction, if you're looking for code generation, if you're looking for document generation, if you're looking just to ask a model, hey, how can I make my resume better? The model can do it for you. So things like that. There are many use cases around what you can do with these models and how it works. But of course, every technology comes with its own risk and rewards, right? Especially in security. When we talk about security, you need especially the technology as powerful as AI, you need to make sure that whatever you are ingesting there, whatever you are training your model on, is also secure. If users are prompting your model, then the prompt that they do, the text that they write, the question that they are asking, is also not producing something which is illicit. Like the output should be also according to the compliance, according to the regulations, and it is not exposing any personal identifiable information or anything which is of sensitive nature. So things like that are super important to capture, and we'll talk about that in the security side today. And also, because it's an entirely new world that has emerged over the last 1-2 years, there are new vulnerabilities that is being identified yet, and that is being leveraged by especially the bad actors out there. We have seen a lot of deepfake attacks being done, misinformation being generated, so forth and so on. So things like that will keep on happening, because now we live sort of like transitioning into a new world of AI, and we want to make sure that we have the right strategy for security when it comes to infrastructure, as well as when it comes to the application layer, right? But there are different rewards as well, right? So enhanced productivity is is one of them. I mean, the models are meant to augment your skill set. So if you are a SecOps analyst, if you are a security person who cares about security, then you don't need to learn everything. The models will actually tell you what are some of the best recommendations to implement. The model can actually generate the code for you as well. So you don't concentrate on programming, you concentrate on instrumentation, you concentrate on making sure that you are doing the right experimentation with that code, to make sure that you are capturing all the edge cases and whatnot, right? So you can concentrate on more business value driven task rather than writing code, which is probably the least amount of value add to your business. And then also the models can also be enhanced to a level where they can actually tighten the security as well for you. So give you step-by-step process of, hey, what you should be doing if there's a vulnerability, if there's a breach out there, right? Or maybe make it more proactive as well, so that it can start protecting from those breaches as well. So, and the compliance is a big part of all these things. Like automated compliance, I feel like is probably one of the biggest advantage, where if you are drifting from compliance, making, like, let's say you have a PCI compliance that needs to be there, and then some of your VMs goes out of they're not being upgraded properly, then how can you initiate such remediations through AI, which can generate those findings, create those findings for you, inform you about that, and also remediate according to the workflow that you have created. So things like that could be done through through these GenAI models, which can help you augment your skill set. There's always a question about, hey, what about Bard, right? So we use Bard, and then this is your GenAI model, because there's a lot of comparison with other third-party similar chatbot out there. But I just wanted to create basically clear this doubt here. Bard is used for consumers and enthusiasts. So we developed Bard to one of the primary objective of developing Bard was to showcase one of the use cases around it, around GenAI, right? How Bard can be leveraged by consumers, how it can create this generalist sort of interactions with the model. But that doesn't mean that you need to use Bard for everything. We have a Vertex AI stack, which is used for enterprise use cases, and that is you should be using. So if you are on Google Cloud, then feel free to leverage Vertex AI to develop applications. Feel free to leverage the expertise of Slalom for you to advise, consult, and also develop the new cool ideas that you want to do it on GenAI. So again, Bard is for consumers. If you are a individual who wants to just have an interaction with a chatbot, Bard is good for you. But for more specific use cases, we want to bring your own data on Google Cloud, you want to augment the foundational model with your own data, this is where Vertex AI is more powerful, and this is where you should be using it. Majority of the B2B use cases should be leveraging Vertex AI. But what is Vertex AI, right? So Vertex AI is a platform that Google has built on Google Cloud, and it's end-to-end ML platform, right? So you can see how it stacks up. And one of the things, like I said before, is that Google has developed everything in this entire stack, right? So this is one of the most powerful things out there. No other company is doing it. People are using, they're trying to stitch together a platform that is good for AI, but Google owns the entire thing, right? So start with GPUs, CPUs, then we have foundation models from the bottom, and then we have the Vertex AI layer, which is allow you to have things like model garden, where you can pick and choose different models, and then it goes to higher level stack where you can have conversation AI, AI search, recommendations, and even on top of that you have contact center AI, document AI, discovery AI, and so forth. So the idea here is that to provide tooling and functionality for all kind of audience. So yeah, if you are an AI practitioner, you are deep into AI, you want to start with foundation model and build on top of that, right? If you are a researcher, you want to take advantage of the foundation model. If you are a developer trying to develop your app, then Vertex AI is the layer that you want to start with. And if you are a business user, all you need to see is like how AI is changing your business, impacting your business, or how it's your consumer is adopting this AI based new world. Then you are more concerned about the upper layer, the top layer here, right? So there's something for everyone, all type of user and all type of audience in the stack. There is also what we call the data science toolkit with Workbench, and and one of the other things that that I also, again, a differentiator for Google Cloud is the native integration with all other services that we have, right? So one of the things that you'll be able to leverage the Vertex AI platform is like, how do you integrate with BigQuery? How do you integrate with Spark, jobs that you are running there? How you integrate with like Spanner, which is a database that we run, global database, and so forth and so on. And how do you put your cloud storage as a data source for your data to fed into the Vertex model, right? So things like that, they are super important, because these the LLMs are great, but they cannot work in silo. You have to create the architecture around them. You have to create the infrastructure around them to actually build an application which can serve your users, right? So again, this is where Slalom can really help you achieve that, right? So feel free to leverage their expertise if you have any use case in your mind. Now, the other thing that we always talk about in Google is AI responsibility, right? So Vertex AI is no different, right? So this general shared responsibility model is basically means that Google owns some of the responsibility for you, but you as a application developer, you as a company who is managing some of the applications, also own some of the responsibility for securing your applications, right? So it's a shared responsibility model that we work on. So on the bottom right, you see protect the infrastructure, which is on yellow, right? So protect the infrastructure is basically Google's responsibility, which basically says, hey, we want to make sure that our data centers are protected through physical security as well as for virtual security. Our network is protected. So any application that we run on Google Cloud, which is a managed application managed by Google, is also protected by the standards that we also expose to our partners and customers, right? So and it also includes making them super compliant to different geographies around the world and so forth. So Google is responsible for that part of your. So you can live with the peace of mind saying, okay, if I put my application on Google, it is encrypted at rest by default, right? So that's Google's responsibility, and Google takes care of that. But when it comes to securing data and applications, which is on the top right, you see that there's a half and half segregation of like blue and yellow, which means that you are responsible for securing your own applications running on Vertex AI. Vertex AI is Google's responsibility, but if your application is running on top of that, then you are also responsible, because we don't control how you deploy your applications. We don't control whether you use best practices or not. We can advise you. Slalom can advise you. So definitely make use of the partnership here with Slalom and Google to make sure that you are deploying with the best practices needs to be there on Google Cloud. We provide prescriptive recommendations. We provide the best practices, tooling, and everything for you to do that. But again, at the end of the day, you are also responsible for how you are deploying your application, how you're running it, whether you are using Cloud Armor, for example, for DDoS attacks, whether you are using binary authorization for making sure that whatever images you are deploying is secure or not, things like that, right? I'm just giving you some examples. And then securing the platform, again, Google is responsible for securing the platform, including access controls, monitoring, and so forth. But you are the one who will say, okay, I want to allow XYZ to have access to this workload, right? So that is something you control. You control whether somebody have an admin right to something, or whether that somebody has a viewer right to something. So it's very important to understand all these concepts of access controls, of data residency, compliance controls. You will dictate what sort of compliance that you need, right? Google cannot dictate it for you. So again, the policy controls, the processes, technology, people are primarily driven by the customers and the partners. So definitely leverage Slalom to work with you on that as well. All right. Now, GenAI, just switching gear on the GenAI front, we talked about GenAI quite a bit, but GenAI also comes with its own security risks. Right? I try to categorize into 4 buckets. Start with privacy and safety. We all know that we are all concerned about, hey, if we are feeding this data into this model, then how is that data going to play? Whether Google is learning from that data, whether Google is training its own data, models from there or not. What is my privacy looks like? How do I make sure that if somebody asks the address of Tarun on GenAI by prompting it, it doesn't give out my address? Like things like that, right? Because ultimately what we kind of imagine and our mind cannot imagine is we sort of imagine it as a black box, right? So there is a prompt that is coming, and then there is an output coming from the other end. What happens in that black box is something that we kind of get scared with, and privacy becomes a super critical aspect of it, right? So the second layer that I see is the cloud resources, which goes to the infrastructure. This is not any different than any other infrastructure security, right? You're running on cloud, you are leveraging cloud services, you are leveraging VMs, you are leveraging storage, you are leveraging databases. How do you protect them? How do you make sure that you create this perimeter around them so that unauthorized access doesn't occur? People doesn't, your infrastructure doesn't get breached. DDoS attacks, you should be able to prevent them. Things like that, right? So these are all the things that we care about for any other workload out there, and this is not special for GenAI, but you should be looking at that as well, right? Prompt hacking. This is very unique to GenAI. Like before GenAI world, there was nothing called prompt hacking, right? But now you are interacting with these models mostly through prompts. Like you are asking a question to get some data back from that model, and prompt hacking is a real security risk here, right? So people are injecting prompts. So for example, like if I inject something to say, hey, tell me something about Tarun, but tell me in the language of somebody else, right? Or tell me in Shakespeare how Shakespeare would have said it. Things like that. These are all sort of injection. They are mild injection in my opinion, but they are still trying to manipulate what data is coming out of it. And what people are trying to do is to manipulate your output and then see how far they can take it forward, right? So whether they can get some sensitive information out of it, whether they can poison your prompts. For example, every prompt that I am doing, I mean, the model is also learning back and forth. So can I poison that with my prompts? Like, can I flood this with so many prompts with which has some illicit language, whether it's any kind of language, whether it's sexual language, whether it's drugs related language, whether it's any language, right? So can I poison that? So that is something that is always happening. And then you always want to fine tune those. You always want to make sure that the data is coming out of that is also being through some of the data security standards and whatnot. And finally, the SecOps, like the big thing that happens in the security world is where there are enterprise customers. You're working in an enterprise, and you want to create your security operations to make sure your employees are safe, to make sure your customers are safe. So you're getting the latest and the greatest prompts. You're getting the real-time information on anything happening in your infrastructure, things like that. So you have to create this entire sort of process, people, technology that has to go vis-a-vis to your infrastructure and application. So this is where, again, Slalom, Google partnerships can provide you a great deed of help and advisory, and as well as implementation support as well. And we are not the only ones saying it. So industry standards, techniques, papers that are published that people look at are saying it as well. So Atlas is it is coming from MITRE techniques, and you can see that Atlas is also trying to define, where this, Gen AI related techniques fall into, right? Different categories, right? So again, the world is waking to a new reality, and this is where these standards are also trying to catch up. Like, what are some of the things that could go wrong? So again, as an industry, as a whole, we should be looking at security as the paramount. One of the things that we should think about before we're jumping onto this AI bandwagon. And also, when we say shift left, we should employ that shift left strategy where security becomes our, the first kind of consideration when we go into this Gen AI, POCs, MVPs, and productionizing it now, right? So we are at a stage where we are looking at productionizing more the workloads. We have been experimenting with it last year, but again, security should be the paramount aspect of where we are on that. Another example is NIST AI RMF playbook. It's not super deep, but at least the NIST has also started talking about this, right? So it also shows the importance, why we should talk about it and why we should think about it. Because as we all know, there's a lot of talk around compliance, regulations. How do we regulate this industry? How do we, make sure that the compliance is there? So as you get onto this productionizing the system, you should be thinking about already, what are some of the compliances and regulations we should be looking at and deploying them, right? I'm going a little faster because I want to get into some of the meat of the content as well. OWASP is another one, right? Top 10 OWASP we always look at. If I have to club them down into 2 buckets or 3 buckets, then prompt injection is top of the mind. Data exfiltration, data, poisoning is another one. And then, and you have, whether insufficient access controls is third one. That's the way I will put it, right? So you should be looking at all these things, and you should be looking at how I can prevent them, right? Google is doing a lot of thought leadership on this. Google has released a secure AI framework. It's a high-level framework that goes through, hey, these are the things you should be thinking about. These are the things you should be implementing. And again, feel free to leverage Slalom Google partnership here to work with you to make sure that you are also thinking about all those things that is published on the framework. The link to the blog is there. The slides will be shared with you. So feel free to check out the blog. Now, first thing that I want to address in terms of GenAI infrastructure security is, how do you maintain control of your data? Google does not have access to your data until you provide it explicitly to Google, right? For any reason, for troubleshooting reason, for, if you open a case or whatever. But Google does not take your data to train the models. Google, and this is pretty much explicit in different, links that I provided here. Where there's AI ML privacy commitment, GCP terms, cloud data processing. There's a great white paper out there, and we stand by our commitment. So that should ease your, at least some of the doubt that how Google is using your data. In terms of, again, infrastructure security, it is not different, right? Beyond prod that Google has, which is powered by Beyond Corp, we employ zero trust model, so that if you're talking from one service to the another within Google infrastructure, then there is, we trust no one, right? We trust no human, we trust no service. So we make sure that there's an identity context being passed between different services, which means that, every time you deploy on Google Cloud and there are service and service talking to each other, there definitely should be some, handshake in privacy to say, okay, I trust this service. Encryption at rest is provided by default. So Google provides any data that you store on Google services is encrypted at rest by default, AES 256. Encryption, you can also bring in your own encryption. You can bring in your keys. You can use, hardware security module, HSM, to provide additional encryption. So again, that shared responsibility model that I was talking about before. Resource manager and cloud IAM provides you with the access controls. Definitely should be leveraging it, which means that, hey, who has access to what, basically, right? So definitely you should be looking at that. Organization policies provide constraints, which means that, hey, my user should not be able to spin up new VMs, or a user with this privilege should not be able to connect to BigQuery. So how do you create that perimeter around your services is how you provide that constraint to the organization policies. Organization policies, again, are restrictions, constraints that are tied up to the IAM controls as well. So look at that as an aspect of basic foundational security whenever you are deploying AI or any other infrastructure out there on GCP, right? VPC service control. So that's a network parameter around your VPC, right? So virtual private cloud VPC on Google dictates, this is your subnets, this is your network. How do I interact with other services outside my network parameter? So if you have, this is your network, VPC service controls allow you to dictate, do my network can communicate with other networks out there? Do my network can communicate with some other services in Google Cloud? Things like that. You can dictate it through VPC service controls. Very, sort of like easy way to create that parameter. Data governance is huge. We'll touch upon that again in application security, but data governance is driven by data DLP service, which is now called sensitive data protection. But this is basically, how you obfuscate your data. How do you hide your PII data? If you are running a model that is connected to your data and you don't know whether the private data exists, first of all, you should know whether the private data exists in that data source. If you don't know for any reason, you should be able to filter it out within the pipeline of your data AI pipeline that you have created, right? So DLP or sensitive data protection becomes super important service in that front. Network security, we take it very seriously. Firewall policy, secure web proxy, many things. Cloud armor for DDoS protection, even though I haven't mentioned it here. You should be leveraging it more and more to create that network security. And finally, the API security that we have, like APIs, every API in Google has an inbuilt security mechanism that you should be leveraging, whether it's Vertex AI, whether it's BigQuery, anything you are interacting with. There is, tokenization aspect of it. There is security aspect of it. You should be leveraging more and more of that. So again, nothing new for Vertex AI, but it goes to like foundational security. I just want to reiterate that. shielded VMs which help you protect against kernel level attacks, right? So if a VM which has golden image, which is verified by Google saying this VM is good to go, you should be using those VMs rather than something which is not certified or stamped by Google. Logging, monitoring, auditing, super important. Every application, every infrastructure should have these provisions along with it. And Security Command Center is the hub of all of these things, because all the security findings you can just push into Security Command Center and create it as a single pane of view glass. So this is how it comes together, right? So if you are building your own LLM, if you are leveraging foundation model, you can see like the ML pipeline on the top, how the general ML models work, but you can see different services, at different areas on the red, where there's data leakage, whether it's DDoS attacks, whether it's unauthorized VM access, so forth and so on, how they're layered up. And this is how you should be configuring your architecture. Again, leverage Slalom and Google partnership for you to advise on that if you don't know how to do it yourself. So again, this is something that we should all be looking at even before we jump onto this AI bandwagon. Looking at the application security layer, any generic prompting starts with input prompts, and then it ends with some output that comes out of LLM. So there are strategies that we should be employing at the input side as well as on the output side, right? And we always should do evaluation and adversarial testing, which means we all should test our models as we are building them and productionizing them. Input safeguards means either you block some of the prompts, you rewrite, you pass through, making sure that the prompts that are being inputted into this model is not something which is trying to manipulate the output, right? Same thing with the output. Before you show it to the user, the PII information has to be hidden, any kind of personal data has to be hidden, and data poisoning should be taken care of. How can you do that? Google models and Google Vertex AI platform offer you safety filters, right? So basically what it says is, under the likelihood from 0.00 to 1, what is the likelihood that this prompt falls under some of the categories that you can either block, you can pass through, or you can rewrite it in a different way, right? So you can see some of the categories here like hate, toxic, violent, and so forth. So trying to avoid both on the input side and the output side, what could be, what could fall into those kind of categories. So you should be looking at safety filters when you try to safeguard your data. Recitation checks is super important. You're coming from GitHub. You want to know which GitHub repo this code is coming from. So again, that citation, that bibliography that we used to write on the papers, super important, right? Otherwise, we don't know where this code is coming from, whether the model is making this up, whether it's hallucinating, right? So things like that become super important in the GenAI world. We should all be looking at that. Prompt injection is another big one. We talked about that, right? Data leakage. This is a classic example. You can look at the slide later, but malicious behavior, how you prompt it, how you actually create that manipulation of the data that is coming out on the other end, all be looking at it. It can go at the code level, it can go at the application level, right? So you should be, again, leveraging your consulting like Slalom and Google to make sure that whatever you're creating is of good standard and deploy the good security aspects of it. This is probably the most important slide, right? So you can see Cloud DLP, which is sensitive data protection here. You can see filter with PAM2 model. You can see vector embedding. Vector embedding is something where if a prompt is done, how similar is the prompt with something that you want to block, right? So vector embedding gives you similarity score, which means, hey, if I'm asking a question in a different way, so question like, hey, what is the address of Tarun versus where does Tarun live, right? It's the same question asked in two different ways. So how similar is that question? So vector embedding allow you to have that similarity score. So again, you can build that logic of blocking, pass through, rewrite, whatever you want to do with that, right? Same thing on the input side, same thing on the output side. There are ways, there are services that you can leverage from Google ecosystem to build your entire prompt pipeline. This is again, DLP service or sensitive data service, as we call it now. It goes through 180 plus information types. It can secure those info types. It can scan your data. It can obfuscate your data. It can mask your data, tokenize your data. Very important service, especially in the AI world, because data is the bedrock for this entire thing, right? Another example, I just put some examples out there for you to look at. PAM2 can be leveraged by third-party services like NVIDIA guardrails. NVIDIA has published this GitHub repo to showcase how PaLM2 can be the basis of securing against prompt injection and jailbreaking. So definitely, there are people who are doing it and publishing it. So you should be looking at all those examples as kind of like a reference point, how you can employ it as well. The last thing I want to, before I pass it on back to Dirk, is, we are also embedding what we are talking into our own services. So we are launching Security AI Workbench. Now, the difference between General BARD and Security AI Workbench, Security AI Workbench is trained on security-specific telemetry data, which means this is a GenAI model built for security. It's not going to hallucinate like generic models, because the data is coming from VirusTotal, Mandiant, Chronicle, petabytes, exabyte scale data, and also from the open source models like OSS, security, GitHub repos, MITRE framework, so forth and so on. And on the other side, if you're a customer, you can leverage this data. You can build your own data on top of it that you are generating from your own infrastructure and gather insights. You can have partners like Slalom creating accelerators on top of that. And we are also embedding into our native security command center, Mandiant, and Chronicle. So you'll see a lot of GenAI features coming into all these services in the near future. Right now, we have started doing it for VirusTotal Insight, that is live. LLM for breach analytics, LLM for assured open source, Mandiant Threat Intel, like you can look at. And these are many, many other things in process right now. So again, we are also walking our talk. We are embedding this, LLM into our own services, which going to drive the behavior, how you use those services. For example, you won't even have to write YARA-L rules anymore in Chronicle. If you know about Chronicle, it's probably going to generate it for you by just prompting it. Right? So things like that will happen very soon. And of course, as I'm speaking here, they are also developing many other things to put into these services back. Again, this is more like a summarization slide. I'll skip over it. I went through it earlier. So again, to skip it, to basically summarize everything, we should be thinking about all these 4 buckets as we embark upon this, GenAI journey that we have. Dirk, over to you.
Yeah, and so Tarun did an excellent job of calling out right through the presentation of cases where you can reach out to Slalom. Just in summary, we can help you from all the way from the assessment through the proof of value side of things. We're running a little bit. I want to leave some time for questions, so if you can jump to the next slide. We also have a Secure Foundations workshop where we walk people through Google's SRF and identify strategic opportunities and prioritize the workload that we should be looking at. And this is a very big picture of which the Secure Foundation, of which the GenAI workloads and securing this that Tarun walked through is a sub-part of it. It's a very, very big part, but it is a sub-part of a bigger world of security, and we can help you with all of it. With that, I think we can open it up for questions. Tarun, Bernard, you agree?
Yeah, thanks for listening to us. We are happy to take questions.
So there's such a wide topic. People may be overloaded in terms of what they need to think. There's everything from the strategy to the products to the what is the kind of security risks involved in this. What we will do afterwards is we will have a little form where we can allow people to submit yet more questions, but feel free to ask something now to get the ball rolling.
Go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, I did have a question. I mean, I guess it's maybe more of an observation, but like with the old SQL injection attacks, so we did things like create parameters and didn't pass in any SQL directly. One of the approaches I'm looking at is to do the same for the prompts, so they become templated. So it may involve some entity extractions, in determining of the intent, and then fill in the template. It loses some of the power of the full natural language, but that's one approach I've been looking at. I don't know what your thoughts are on how to actually protect some of these prompts, because the point being is I'm a bit nervous to just put an unfiltered prompt into the LLM.
There is already frameworks that Rune hinted at it, that look at specifically around what you want, both in and out, things like topical guardrails, things that there's prompt engineering around things like step back that help you get to the real question that the user's asking without exposing risk. So there's a body of evidence that you may want to read through before you do something just for yourself. But it is a good idea. And as you indicated, like just jumping into the raw prompt and sending it to the model without any guardrails to it, especially if you're thinking along the barred lines of things, that's not a good idea. The whole enterprise stack that Google has many, many controls in it that you should, and that's one of the reasons why I don't like it when people speak about barred, like that is the enterprise solution, because it doesn't have this level of controls that the enterprise stack does.
Yeah, if you could post some links or send some links for additional reading, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Sure. I think there's some in the presentation, but I'll definitely add some links to that. Tarun, you probably have like way more than I do, even.
Looks like Tarun got kicked off, but he'll probably rejoin.
Yeah, we'll share some links. We'll definitely share some links on things that you can do to secure the raw prompt itself.
All right.
Okay. We got Tarun back.
We have.
My Chrome window crash. I probably have too many tabs open on my side.
We have 1 more minute left. If there are any more questions, or Tarun, Dirk, Daniel, you want to close this out?
Sure. Thanks everyone for attending. And I guess maybe just one high-level question that we can perhaps end on is, Tarun, Dirk, out of all the things that were presented today, right, we had a very broad presentation, which was amazing. Are there certain things that you feel like customers are overlooking or challenged with, at the top of the list related to GenAI and security?
Yeah, I'll start and maybe Dirk can add on to that. One of the things that I feel like is super important that people are not considering is they are hooking the models to different data sources. And sometimes you don't know what goes into those data sources, right? Because, we live in this world where there's so much data being captured from all angles, from all directions. And then sometimes we just don't know what is there in that data, right? Whether it's, somebody's personal information, whether it's, whether if you're interacting with customer support, somebody, just plugged in their credit card number that we captured accidentally in our database. So things like that. And on the other end, it poses a risk that you could expose that data to the, if somebody's trying to manipulate the prompt. So I feel like if there's one thing that I would like to encourage everyone here is to understand the data that you have, and also put some, protective measures through that, to obfuscate that sensitive data. Even if you don't understand the data completely, that's fine. Create the pipeline in your, LLM models where the data is being filtered both at the input side as well as on the output side, making sure that there is enough safety in terms of the language that is being used as well as on the data that is being exposed to the public. So I feel like data, security, even though it's a very generic term that we use in every day, like, hey, we secure our data, but I've seen a lot of times that people just don't know what sort of data they have, and that poses a lot of problems when you connect it with GenAI models.
Yeah, and to add to what Tarun said, it's not just understanding the data, it's also the evolution that happens alongside it. So let's say you put in like a RAG architecture to introduce customer data into into what the model can use. It's very easy to create the architecture in such a way that you can just dump additional data into a storage bucket and the LLM model will consume it. That is an easy way to exploit the model, because on the day that you build it, it might look great and all your controls might seem to work, but merely by introducing additional data into this ecosystem, I can manipulate it. So understanding your ML ops is also, or putting decent controls into your ML ops is and the processes around it is important as well.
Yeah, one thing that I think I missed out on the last question, somebody was asking about prompt injection. So Rebuff is also another framework that you can leverage. It's an open source framework. It works on LangChain and developed by LangChain. So definitely you can take a look at that as well to put that again in the pipeline. But there are other things, again, from the data security point of view, there from the prompt security point of view that you should be leveraging, including safety filters and all. So there are many ways to create that, inject that security into your pipeline. And I encourage you to get in touch with Slalom here, Dirk and Daniel, who will be able to, work with you, see what is best for you. And then, in the background, we can also get engaged as well, making sure that whatever is being built on, and it's in our own vested interest as well, because whatever is building on GCP, we want it to be secure, right? We want to make sure that whatever you're building is on the best practices that Google publishes.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and there's one infrastructure that Tarun mentioned in this. I would look at that as a point of reference. He mentioned the NVIDIA NeMo guardrails. It's a good way of constraining the output of your models. There's lots of these Rails type infrastructure being created right now. It's a good place to look at as well to help constrain the output.
Perfect. All right. Thanks for everyone. Great presentation, Tarun, Dirk. Really appreciate everything. Daniel for navigating the comments. Everyone, thank you for making the time to attend today's session. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Take care.